guess what I like the way you talk about the online circulation, precisely because of that peculiar circumstances that make this 10 years somewhat we cannot just simply approach it as a film in the conventional sense. So I agree that Clement said kind of spectacle, but maybe it's mean even more than spectacle. I guess after so many years, 3 years, look back, we find that the film, how do we talk about that? We can't use the conventional film study perspective, right? The film is not about author, I guess. I cannot even name the director, I'm sorry. It's not authorship or anything else. No author theory. Is it a film about genre? It's not. It's again genre. I don't think political cinema could be called a genre. There's no generic convention of this film. Just a kind of episode film or omnibus film. They just put different shots together, different episodes together. So it's again genre in a way. And indeed, even though when they put all the 5 short films together and somehow kind of equivalent to a feature kind of length, but somehow I guess in general, film critics especially, they dismiss all these episode movies. I guess, look at the film studies. How many scholars have ever studied episode films? There's almost no book on this kind of movie. So, and also it's not about craft. Even it got the best features, right, from our Hong Kong Academy. So it's not about film. It's even beyond film. Even though we can use the film language to talk about this film, but the significance of 10 years is not about film. It's in a way anti-film. So I guess the good thing maybe offhand to say about this film is it is an event. Yeah. It's an event. It politicized. It politicized in the sense that it can mobilize people. That's the reason why so many people vote in the industry for this movie, right? Even though not because of its craftsmanship or its quality and all that. We know that it gathered people. So I think in a way this film, if we can still insist on calling it a film, indeed I guess it's more like especially when you brought up that episode from online circulation, it's more kind of compatible with the YouTube kind of watching experience. I guess this is why it's so crazy about it, especially online, because it fits so well online. Because no people has a patience. Look at the younger generation. Our kids they have no patience to watch the whole features. But what drawn them, of course, is this kind of 10 minutes or even less than that kind of episodes. So in that sense, I guess, this 10 years, can rescue movie, if we still call it that way, insist on this term of rescue film or moving image from just being an entertainment, being an art, or being an ideology. So I would understand the politics, in that sense, it's kind of ongoing thing. Everyone talk about this, can draw something from it, not necessarily the film specialists and all that. So I guess that is an event in a way to all of us. But precisely when it is an event, then I have some doubts that whether it can be repeated. Just somewhat like Occupy movement. The term somehow is like a chain effect. It carries all over the world. It becomes somewhat universal. But no Occupy movement is same as the other Occupy movement. So when you try to repeat this formula, and especially when you say, 10 years Japan, 10 years Thailand, 10 years Taiwan, somehow you seem to use the national cinema concept to frame the film, whereas 10 years original is nothing to do with the national frame. Right? In a way, want to go beyond that. You see, anti-nation state. So of course, if we look at all those 10 years with a country, I guess Taiwan, I would say, is more like a nation to me than, even though it's on record. I put myself in dangerous. But anyway, kind of still, in a way, is a national cinema, right? But Hong Kong, in a way, is not. So how would that be repeated? That is an issue. I want to know more about it. So when you say, it carries to all other countries, yes, that's true. But in a way, it's not 10 years. So because of that reason, to answer Gina's questions, which episode I would like most from this? Maybe it's not about liking, but I find that data from 10 years Japan, as well as Song of the City from 10 years Thailand. I'm kind of interested in these two episodes because, well, they are not very futuristic. It's not about 10 years later. Well, it's all about the future is already here. And it's about everyday life. Kind of, well, they are relatively unpretentious. It's about everyday life. And somehow, for example, in Song of the City, I could not understand what that means. Well, but the statue, I guess really represents the military, well, and the people were living down under, being overseen by the military statue. Well, they don't care. They are very indifferent and all that. And the data is also not sci-fi. It's just a very personal, private thing. But somehow that kind of control is already there. So I guess, well, maybe to just put it very briefly, well, kind of, well, this is my. I have more questions, but I guess I can come back later.
I wanted to talk about the formula that you talked about and how our intention of bringing this to an international stage. And now, most of them have, all three of them have been released in their home. Oh no, actually 10 Years Taiwan hasn't been released yet in Taiwan. But, I'm going to be very honest, the numbers were not impressive. There were people who followed this project locally who went to the cinemas to see it, but it was nothing like the numbers that we had for Hong Kong. Nor would the reaction it wasn't the same. And that is somehow, it's sort of like as producers and as distributors, it was very disappointing. And we also have to think about why. Why can't we reproduce this in other countries? Maybe it's because I don't know. What do you think about? Maybe it's because of the intention that we had. We wanted it to be like that, and we wanted it to be have the same effect as it did with Hong Kong. That it didn't really work. But in terms of festivals, very interestingly, it's a very different ecosystem by itself. The original Hong Kong film, very popular amongst festivals. It played in more than maybe 30 or 40 festivals around the world. And those festivals, once they knew about this international project, all of them have been coming in. And 10 Years Thailand, 10 Years Taiwan, Japan, they've been traveling. Some festivals played all three, some festivals played two, some festivals only chose one of them. But it's sort of having its own life in the festival circuit. And that doesn't translate, that kind of like intrigue to this project doesn't translate at all with the local audience.